because of these individuals. But yeah, that's another story that I'm not going to talk about.
Yeah, I remember seeing that on the Instagram story. That was pretty funny. So, can you describe like what inspired the name change from Stack to SEQL? Like you mentioned earlier, like the events like the George Floyd event, but was there really one thing that made you like really decide we need to change the name?
Yeah, we got a cease and desist letter. It was legal. All right, I'll explain this to y'all. So a cease and desist letter is essentially saying somebody is, they're going to sue you. They're warning you, if you don't change, we're going to sue you, right? So we were called STAC, S-T-A-C. It stood for students, athletes, coaches. Do y'all know who Jerry Jones is? Owner of the Cowboys. So we had a Forbes article come out about us. Like an hour later, I'll never forget, I got this email and I'm like, what the heck? Called a lawyer. It's from Stack Sports, S-T-A-C-K. It's owned by Jerry Jones. We did some investigating. He was like, changed, like, Jerry Jones has a lot of money, right? We were rich and smart off with like maybe like $500,000 in the bank, which is nothing compared to what this individual has. So yeah, that's why. Not many people know that, but that's why we changed the name.
That's pretty funny.
And the reason that, so I got a tattoo here as well, right? So we got tattoos last summer, me, Bryant, Jamal, and an intern that actually turned down a full-time job offer. And he has our tattoo on his leg. And we got the tattoo. And like 2 weeks later, they're like, we got to change the name. And we're all like, well, it's got to stay with S, right? It didn't have to, but there were some pretty bad names because we only stuck with one letter out of the alphabet. Like somebody says Shart, and I'm like, Shart? That's why.
Yeah, so here's another question from one of our members, Henry O'Farrell. And, sorry, I lost my place. Okay, so, he was wondering where you got your original funding, like to really start up SEQL.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So our first funding was from friends and family. So we had some people in our ecosystem that, they threw some money at us. Like if they lost it, it wasn't really going to be a big deal. But they just definitely supported that, we were young and hungry and had a vision. That was our original funding.
So is there, how did you was it just like them being friends and family that kind of convinced them, or did you really have to convince them to buy into SEQL? So
yeah, so we've raised 4 funding rounds. So the first one was $120,000, and it was easy. That was easy. The next round was we went to people that we hadn't talked to before. I'm very ambitious, right? I was like, we can easily raise $1.2 million off an idea. 98, 97 in the class. We didn't go to Harvard. We didn't go to MIT. We don't know anything technical, and I still thought we could do that. It was a rude awakening, right? It took 200 no's to get the first yes after that. It was like a pivotal moment where we essentially had to throw in some of our own money. We weren't going to make it, but we made it, and that was definitely a pivotal point. But yeah, that was really, really tough. But what I learned through that process, and really what started to turn from the no's is the yes, is when I pitched, I would say pretty much I was going to them saying, we need your money. We need it. But that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is you pitch a really big opportunity, and if they don't get in, they're gonna miss out. Does that make sense? It's like, we're building this big party. We might not know everything yet, but if you don't tell me yes in the next 24 hours, you're gonna miss out on the biggest startup in Richmond history. And it was hard to say those things, right? I'm 27, I have every single emotion every day. There's a lot of times where I'm like, oh, this really is going to be the next Apple. But then I'm also like, I need to fill out an application for Burger King because I'm not going to have a job tomorrow, right? So saying those things are definitely tough, but saying those things with confidence, people want confident, energetic, young people to back. And yeah.
So you just mentioned being young. Do you think that helped you at all with people because they realized that you could more connect to the people you're interacting with, the high school athletes?
Yeah, definitely, 100%.
100%. So here's another question from one of our members, Khalil Nash. He was interested on how SEQL is different from another recruiting platform like Huddle.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So Huddle is an evaluation tool, right? I don't know how many of y'all, I'm sure all of y'all use Huddle, right? You guys will film the game, you'll come in and watch it the next day. So the school pays for Huddle. Y'all can't upload videos to it. It's available for select sports. But generally, Huddle's a great company. We actually we don't have a partnership with them, but within SEQL, you can also have your Huddle link. It's we have an API integration with them so that we can also house their data on our platform. Huddle's a great company.
That's really interesting. So, how did you decide to focus your company all around like sports, whether it be popular, unpopular, rather than just like the quote popular sports? And are you trying to support like the underrepresented athletes, not just like the Division I football and basketball players or the potential Division?
Yeah, so equality really encompasses all sports. So that's why we went after all sports. The revenue generating sports, right? So like, somebody tell me y'all's favorite college. One person. Georgia, right? All right, Georgia makes 95% of their revenue from football and basketball. But there's still 22 other sports. And equality doesn't just say we're going to go after the revenue generating sports. We're going to go after all. So, and then what was the other? We support all athletes.
Yeah. So, like, how are you able to? 'Cause obviously, football and basketball are kind of like the most lucrative sports. But how are you able to like kind of encompass all sports, like whether it be like the field hockey or the soccer, like sports that may not be as popular in America?
Yeah. We listen to what the coaches want. We listen to the athletes of those respective sports, and then we provide a unique experience on a per sport basis, so that when a football player comes on SEQL and a gymnast comes on SEQL, yeah, they're going to have essentially different experiences. But we listen to stakeholders in those industries to really develop the best football experience and the best gymnastics experience.
And when they go on the app, will they see like specific places where they can like look at specific coaches and look at the sport they're interested in? Or,
Yeah.
That's awesome. So also, we mentioned this earlier, like your brand ambassadors, but like how important is it to have such big names being invested in your company? Like how has that helped you kind of bring your company to another level?
Yeah, just from like a credibility perspective, it's opened a lot of doors. It's really, when someone hands somebody a pitch deck, right? So like I'm out fundraising and I'm out raising money. People get pitch decks all the time. I mean, people are probably they're looking at them all day. And you have to have something that sticks out at front, right? And they're not just looking at sports companies, they're looking at pharmaceutical companies, they're looking at this, they're looking at that. And a lot of people in the venture world, a lot of people holistically know things about sports, which is a great thing. So how can we have the best people affiliated with our brand, both from a missions perspective, but also from a credibility perspective? And individuals involved with SEQL, like a DeAndre, have really provided a lot of credibility. And they've helped us really fake it till we make it in some areas as well, right? When you have those names, you can, alter timelines a little bit and fluctuate things as you need.
So as SEQL's all about like equality in sports, have you tried to get any more ambassadors that may be in like other sports that high school athletes may be interested in that aren't like as interested in the football or basketball?
Yeah, so really exciting news. Actually, last week we got a guy by the name of Matt Scott. He won a gold medal this year for the U.S. Paralympic basketball team. So he's going to be coming on our platform. And Matt's a great guy. He's a cool dude. Other than that, we have individuals across a wide array of sports that some are big names, some are small names. But the small names to y'all might be big in that prospective sport. Like in the wheelchair basketball community, Matt Scott is that guy, right? So that's a big, big, exciting thing for us, and that really does embrace the equality aspect of our mission.
That's awesome. So we saw that you raised $4 million in July. So can you describe that process and how SEQL plans to use that money?
Yeah. So that process took about 4 months, well, really 2 months to get the first thing. So the process for us, and I'm going to go into some terminology that y'all might not know, but I'll just say it and y'all can look it up later. So we raised all of our pre-seed capital through convertible debt. It's essentially a loan that turns into equity at a future date. So this was our first equity round. This is the first time that said SEQL is worth something. This cup is worth a dollar figure, right? So we had to go out and say, hey, we're worth this because of A, B, and C. Obviously, an investor says, you're probably worth a little less because of this, this, and this, and you have to meet them in the middle. So we had to find the right strategic venture capital partner. And this was our first institutional capital, meaning like a venture capital fund. And a venture capital fund essentially has a bunch of limited partners. It could be schools, it could be endowments, it could be insurance companies, it could be really high net worth individuals. And they pool all their money together into one thing, and they invest in specific companies, and they have a thesis. And that was our first institutional capital. And really, once we got that, it went from, I don't know if y'all recall me saying, it took 200 no's to get our first yes outside of friends and family. Really, once we locked in that venture capital fund, I was getting emails literally left and right, and this has never happened. It was really cool, saying, hey, can I put in $100,000? Hey, can I put in $150,000? And me, I'm like, yeah, but who are you? And obviously, but I also learned through that process, and we didn't take everybody's money. You don't want to take everybody's money. You want to be selective on who you take on, especially as you progress as a company. Because every investor that you bring on board, you don't want them to just write a check. I mean, what's that going to do? I want someone to write a check and then get us 50 universities and then $2 million because they know their best friend is the CEO of Nike, and Nike has a corporate impact fund that provides back to companies that are providing initiatives like SEQL. You got to be selective on who you bring capital, definitely as you progress as a company. Early on, if you can be, that's amazing, but we had to just take what we could get.
So how are you able to determine who would actually really help you and whose money would be more worth it than others?
The network, we ended up dealing with a lot of people. We had 5 people really introduce us to a really big network. And we got into the Washington, D.C. network, which is a lot bigger than Richmond. So we knew who to trust and who not to trust. But getting into the Washington, D.C. market, 8 months ago, I didn't know anybody in Washington, D.C. But I can proudly say, just from our company is saying proudly, we know people in Washington, D.C. We know the heavy hitters in Washington, D.C. now, which is that's a really big thing. And that's nobody has access to that in Richmond, from my knowledge, from a company perspective. So we're really, really lucky with that.
Have you expanded outside of just DC and partnerships?
Yeah.
So where have you expanded?
We're nationwide right now, right? We're nationwide, so all over.
Yeah, that's crazy. Here's another question from member Ned Lumpkin. He's curious. He wants to know what are reasonable expectations for the growth of SEQL in the next couple of years, and how you plan to expand the company.
Yeah, for growth in the next couple of years, and we really don't discuss our valuation or our metrics publicly, but in the next, really by the end of next year, we want to have 1 million athletes involved, right? Which is a lot. Where we want to be, we want to, and I'll say this, we really and truthfully have the team, we have the trajectory, and we have the opportunity to be Richmond, Virginia's first tech unicorn. Y'all know what a tech unicorn is? It's a $1 billion company. It takes a lot to get there, right? You need the right team, you need the right resources, you definitely need a lot of luck, but that's where we want to be.
So do you keep trying to expand your team with filmers and editors and people that work on the coding? Are you continually expanding that in order to keep growing and growing and growing and try to become that $1 billion business?
Yeah, and there's 2 different things. Individuals like Wright, we've got 1,000 in the pipeline right now. Though, and Wright, you will never know this, but you are such a big facet for SEQL from an external stakeholder perspective, right? Like I said, you push the button, right? The Uber driver goes there and gets the footage. If we don't have that, y'all aren't going to come back to our platform. But then and that is so big. But then also from the internal side is really big. And we had a really, really big hire over the past month. He started yesterday, but he brought some credibility to our team. He's 59 years old. Y'all know who Jeff Bezos is? So he was a direct report to Jeff Bezos. He launched a company called Audible and made it the most successful company for Amazon in an international market in company history. So he's 59 years old. He knows people in the industry. When I was talking with his references, I was talking with the head of product at Nike. She took my call and I was like, oh my God, that was really cool. I spoke with the CMO at Audible. I spoke with really unique people, right? But an individual, and his name's John Fleming, right? An individual like that provides credibility, provides expertise. He's failed a lot, right? But he's also had a lot of successes. But we're gonna be able to apply what he did well, what not to do, and really get us to that big milestones that we want to hit as a company. But that was a really, really big win for us, and that happened, started yesterday. So it's been fun.
That's great to hear. So now kind of switching gears, what advice would you give to a high school student who may not know what they want to do in the future?
Yeah. First off, I'm sure that there's definitely cliques at every single school, right? sure a lot of people are like, oh, this guy or girl or this individual is weird, or I would never want to talk with this